with wildlife, law, and yoo-hoo. We've got the lieutenant himself, Lieutenant James Edwards from the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife, lovingly known as the game warden or the game ranger, depending on whether you're from east or west of I-35. Lieutenant James, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thank you guys for having me.
Now, the reason that we actually orchestrated this, we're having a fishing derby in a couple of weeks. That's actually not the real reason. There's going to be this free kids fishing class coming up this Saturday at Western Technology Center's Elk City campus, but you were telling me it has been so successful. The registration's been so successful that what happened?
It's the registration's closed. They've met their capacity. I think actually it was set for 40. I think they took a little more than 40. So of course it says have to have a parent. Ages 5 to 15 have to have a parent. So they're expecting close to 100 people there total.
Wow! Are you surprised that it was this popular?
No, not really. Looking at how we do with the fishing derby. I mean, when you look at that success, and that's what spawned this was...
Spawned?
Yeah, see, pun intended. Was the fact that, there are a lot of kids that probably show up to that derby that may have never wet a line before. And yes, we do give them a little bit of a casting demonstration, talk a little bit about safety, but, they're kind of behind the 8 ball there. They're jumping out there trying to compete against all those other kids. So Bobby Armstrong with Oklahoma Hunters and Anglers approached me, said that he and Sean Waters at H2O Bait and Tackle had talked about this and said, hey, why don't we try to put on a casting and fishing skills camp, class here. So they approached me. I said, man, I think it's a great idea. I'll get you the poles. I'll bring fish identification posters. I'll bring, other stuff. They said they'd provide lunch. So it's going to happen.
So who's doing the teaching?
So there will be several game wardens there to help with all of it. But Bobby and Sean and some of the other OHA, Oklahoma Hunters and Anglers volunteers will be there to help teach the kids knot tying and all that and casting. And we'll talk about regulations, fish ID, places to go, different things like that, especially with parents, and get the parents set for taking their kids out. So. 96.5
KECO is the early morning show. We got Lieutenant James Edwards, the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife here, talking about the Free Kids Fishing Class, which will be this Saturday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Western Technology Center's Elk City campus. But registration is already full. How did the word get out about this, and how do people find out?
I think just Facebook, social media stuff. OHA has a pretty broad reach. Bobby and those guys are really dedicated volunteers. They love hunting and fishing, and they want to see this stuff continue. Sean and them over here at the store at the H2O Bait and Tackle, they obviously love fishing. So they're going to put the word out to everybody. It got shared, pretty widely. So, even some of my family members, my in-laws and stuff, hey, I'm going to take our kids to this. And I'm like, that's a great thing. Like I said, I grew up fishing farm ponds from the time I was 5 or 6 years old, and a lot of the time, by the time I was 10 or 11, I was doing it by myself. I would take off and go. So you don't see that as much anymore. There are some kids, thankfully, out at the Sayre FFA Ag Barn, just on the street, kind of by the park out there. There's some kids that are same age as my kids that'll jump out there and go fishing and stuff, and it's good to see. For me, that's something better for them to do than running the streets or playing video games.
Yeah!
Don't get me started on
what
video
about
games.
Fishing video games?
Do they exist?
Surely
they do.
So this class is coming up this Saturday at WTC in Elk City. I would imagine it's not just a classroom setting. You gave them rods and reels, so they're going to be outside learning how to cast and that sort of thing?
There's going to be a classroom portion, especially probably the knot tying. It's probably going to be hot. It's probably going to be 100 degrees. But they're going to do some of the knot tying probably inside. We'll talk about the regulations and things and fish ID. Then they're going to take them outside and learn to cast. So it'll be the same kind of rods that we have typically at the at the fishing derby. We are going to be at the fishing derby again. Like I said, we thought this was a good way to, build upon that. So hopefully this will continue to grow. Maybe we'll have more next year.
This is the first I have ever heard of Oklahoma Hunters and Anglers. What is this group?
They are a nonprofit group that they're a bunch of volunteers that are just trying to grow hunting and fishing in Oklahoma. Bobby Armstrong, Amber Armstrong, Rick Nolan, Todd Craighead. There's a lot of other people involved, and they want to donate their time and their efforts to see hunting and angling grow in the state of Oklahoma. And one of the things that when you get into some of the national organizations, not knocking national organizations, not at all, because they're great partners, what we call NGOs, non-governmental organizations, that help the wildlife department. But a lot of times if they're a national organization, sometimes that money raised locally has to go outside. With Oklahoma Hunters and Anglers, they're not national, so they keep all of that locally raised money stays local. And that's, to me, that's a good thing. Not saying anything bad about the national organization. It's just it's a byproduct of what they do. Mm-hmm. So, but like I said, Bobby and Amber and those folks at OHA, since they've started basically last year, they're all over the place. And they're not just out here. They're scattered all over and doing stuff all over. So
96.5 KECO's The Early Morning Show, talking to Lieutenant James Edwards from the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife about the Free Kids Fishing class this Saturday at Western Technology Center. Unfortunately, it's so popular, they've already closed registration, which is actually a really good sign. What do you have? You got... There we go. Thank you. And they will learn this song as well, right?
Andy Griffith Show. Starring Andy Griffith.
They're on their way to
with
fish.
Ronnie Howard.
The name of the song is The Fishing Hole.
That's right. Don Knott.
They'll learn how to tie Don knots this Saturday at the class.
I certainly hope hook safety is part of the program.
True. Yes.
If you've ever gotten a hook in your hand or like a brother of ours in the back of his head while casting, you have to be careful with those hooks.
You ever been stabbed by a catfish? You caught one and you're getting it out and get the hook out. You ever been stabbed by a catfish? I have. Is it those little?
It's their fins, either their caudal fins on the side. That's what they are.
Increasingly, do people who fish wear gloves?
You mean like rod and reel fishing?
Yeah.
Have you seen this?
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to wonder. Am I thinking of that, or is it simply the noodling hand fishing?
Oh yeah,
that I've been thinking of.
Fishermen,
I would think, if you're going to handle catfish, even if you're rod and reel fishing and you're handling catfish.
Yeah, but it's hard to manipulate a hook though with the gloves. Yeah. I would think.
Well, they're not mittens like Bernie Sanders wears. I think they're latex style type gloves. A tight fit. A thin tight fit.
We've got a question from a listener on the text line 225-9697. Is it legal to stop on a county road and fish off a bridge?
Cannot obstruct a roadway. You can't just stop on the bridge and park there. And if you're on the bridge, you have to maintain clear roadway for any travel. So we don't recommend it. We recommend if you're going to do that, you got to get off of the roadway. Then the other problem that you get into is where is the actual boundary for the private property, which all of that is private property. There's just an easement for the road. So it kind of gets into a technical spot, but no, you don't. You really can't stop and stand on a bridge and park on a bridge and things like that to do that, especially.
If people want to learn more about Oklahoma Hunters and Anglers, they have a website, oklahomahuntersandanglers.org. oklahomahuntersandanglers.org. The Free Kids Fishing class is going to be this Saturday at Western Technology Center, 9 to 1. Registration's closed. Apparently, it was so popular, people wanted to be a part of it so badly, it just filled up. And you said they actually were going to stop it at 40, but they went a little above that because there was so much interest, which is a good sign.
Yep.
Have you heard how the fishing was this spring and summer in western Oklahoma?
It was kind of all over the place. There was good days, and then there was days it was just nothing really good. But everything seemed to be pretty average overall, I think. The only thing kind of stinks is Lugert is still. You might catch some catfish out of there, but we had a golden algae kill again down there. Of course, the lake level was tremendously low, so it's not as good a fishery as it was. Hopefully some of this rain that we got over the last week's running in there and helping things out. I don't know whether they're going to irrigate or not. I mean, there's not much there. But anyways, hopefully it's doing better. Elk City Lake's full, obviously. Clinton Lake's full. Foss is, if it's not full, it's pretty darn close. And they've had some good hybrid fishing here the past, about 3 weeks ago. They were doing really good late evenings, early mornings on hybrid, catching them on the top of the water. They're hitting shad and stuff up there. So fishing's all right. We'll see what Christmas in July brings this weekend. I know y'all are going to talk about that later, but hopefully everybody stays safe. I want to thank Western Technology Centers for hosting this. I think there was Airgas was on there, H2O Bait and Tackle, OHA, and, of course, the Wildlife Department is helping with that. So thank everybody for that, and thank Bobby and all them that are doing all this. Like I said, it's volunteer stuff. They're not getting paid. So
proud member of the Oklahoma graduating class of 1994, the Yoo-Hoo Lieutenant himself, Lieutenant James Edwards, Oklahoma Department of Wildlife. James, always a pleasure. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.